Hello everyone, in this video we are going to discuss how to play the Evans Gambit. It is a very interesting gambit, played from the white side, and it can land in your position in your game 90% of the time. So the probability of winning your game is pretty high. So if you really want to improve your game, make sure to watch the video till the end. So let's quickly jump into the video. So we are playing with the white pieces and we start the game with 1 e4, e5, and it's also known as the king's pawn opening, and this opening is played like mostly every time. e5, knight f3, knight to c6, bishop to c4. This is also known as the Italian game. I'm pretty sure many of the viewers watching the video does play this opening. After bishop c4, we have bishop c5. And here after bishop c5, there are many ways for white to continue the game. Short castle, g3, c3, many ways, knight c3. And at the place of bishop c5, there is a move knight f6. But the knight f6 is a move that is very common, but it is not generally played because we have this knight g5 and the fried lever attack. So that's the reason bishop c5 is the main move in this position, so that after short castle, now black will develop the knight. But after bishop c5, on this move, we are going to play the move b4, and from here the Evans Gambit begins. After b4, we are hitting the bishop. If the bishop moves anywhere, we can simply expand on the queen side, and we already gained a good amount of tempo by playing the move b4. So here black is having two options to capture the pawn via bishop or the knight. If he captures with the knight, we are going to play c3, hitting the knight, and now we are going to play the move d4. So basically this exact same position transposes. So we are going to go back. Just remember, after d4, ed, cd, bishop to b4 check. This is the position that we are going to discuss. So at the place of knight b4, bishop into b4 is the main move. So what's the point of sacrificing this b pawn? So after bishop into b4, we get this tempo by playing the move c3, hitting this bishop. And after c3, black is having three main moves in the position to continue the game. Bishop a5, bishop c5, and bishop to e7. Let's discuss one by one. If bishop to a5, pulling the bishop back, we play the move d4. Our idea is to simply get a good amount of center that we have now at the place of sacrificing one pawn. And now our idea could be to capture simply this pawn or to push this pawn. So here black is having the only option of capturing the d4 pawn. And after eg4, our opponent is thinking us to capture the pawn back. But after ed4, we are going to play the move queen to b3, developing the queen and now eyeing on the f7 pawn. And here knight into h6 is already a big blunder because of bishop into h6, followed by bishop into f7. So here after queen b3, black must protect the f7 pawn, which black plays queen to e7, protecting the pawn and also threatening to capture the e4 pawn. After queen e7, white plays the move simply short castle. What we are doing here is we are trying to play as fast as possible. We have castles, we are developing our pieces, and yeah, that's how we must play chess. After short castle, black captures the pawn on c3. Because here, white's idea is to simply capture this pawn back, and now then we would be having a very nice center control. All our pieces are developed, so white is already better. So the only option black is having is to forcefully capture the pawn on c3. After dc3, we capture the pawn back, again developing our another piece. After knight into c3, here black can either develop his knight or he can even go for capturing the knight in this position. I think knight f6 might not be the best idea because here the knight on c3 can simply jump on d5. And here the queen and the knight is attacked. So knight into d5, ed5, the knight is attacked, the knight is forced to move, and now after knight to e5, simply knight takes, queen takes, bishop b2, hitting the queen, hitting the pawn, and like after queen g5 trying to defend this pawn, simply queen a3. Brilliant move. Simply attacking the bishop and also covering black's idea of doing short castle. So after bishop b6, you can simply get your another piece into the game. Check, king to d8, and you can already sense the position is completely winning for white. Or you can simply shock your opponent by playing the move bishop into g7, because here queen into g7 leads to queen to e7 checkmate. So the position is already completely winning for white. There is no way we must analyze any further. So this is what happens if black plays knight to f6. If black goes for bishop into c3, which I think is the most practical option, queen into c3, knight to f6 now, bishop to a3, attacking the queen. d6, e5, trying to open up the position. Once we have developed all our pieces, it's time to open up the center. e5, knight to e4. Because if knight takes, we are going to simply capture with the knight. You can't capture with the pawn because the queen is hanging. So if queen takes, I can simply play rook e1. And it's game over for black. So that's the reason knight to e4 is the only move for black to survive the game. And here, simply queen c2, hitting this knight. Bishop to f5, trying to protect this knight and also trying to threaten some deadly ideas with the knight g3 maybe. But here white is having a very simple move, which is bishop to d5. The idea is to simply capture the knight on c6, as well as we are also threatening to capture the knight on e4. So it's already winning for white. Just one more move after knight into e5. You can capture this knight if you want, but after knight into f3 check, g into f3, takes, black is having 3 pawns for a bishop, which I guess still white is better. But I guess the best option for white would be, at the place of capturing the knight, first play the move knight to g4. Hitting this bishop, and once the bishop goes back, then you can simply capture the knight, and the position is already completely winning for white. So this is how you can simply play, this is how you must play this position of playing the move bishop to a5 in this position. A very interesting one. So now let's try to discuss what happens if black plays the move bishop to e7. After bishop to e7, we play the move d4. Already our idea is to get a good amount of center. That's the idea of sacrificing the b4 pawn. And after d4, black is having 3 main options: d6, knight to a5, or capturing the pawn. If black captures the pawn, we play the move queen to b3. Developing the queen, idea is to capture the f7 pawn, knight to a5. Knight h6 is no longer possible because the bishop is covering the square. And now queen e7 and queen f6 is also not possible because the bishop is on e7. So the only hope that black is having is to play knight a5, double attacking the pieces. But simply capture the pawn on f7, giving a check, king f8, and now queen f4. Basically, black captures the bishop, we capture the knight, and material-wise, we are even. Maybe black is a pawn up, 6-7 pawns, and yeah, black is a pawn up, but the position is good for white, practically. After queen into a5, d6. Because if black tries to capture the pawn, I guess it only favors white after knight into c3 because black's king is exposed. We are simply developing our pieces. Practically speaking, I think white is already very healthy. That's the reason I've considered the move d6. But here you can simply give a check, bishop e6. And now a very interesting idea, just simply capture the pawns on the queen side. After rook b8, you can even capture the a7 pawn. And it looks like black got some huge amount of activity. But that's not the case because we just need one more move to castle, which black can't really stop it. And once we castle, we can simply start pushing upon the queen side. So material wise, we are even. Our opponent's king is much weaker than ours. So it's completely winning for us. So this is how you must play if your opponent plays the move queen to d4. So now let's try to discuss what happens if black plays d6. After d6, queen to b3, the same idea. Knight to a5, capture on f7, king f8, queen f4, takes, pawn takes, queen to d5 check. Bishop e6, still capture the b7 pawn. Takes, knight c3. As I said, the idea still remains the same. We want to short castle. We want to open up the center, expose the king. And that's how we simply get a good position. So this is exactly the same variation, I would say, if black plays d6. So finally, let's check out what happens if knight f5. After knight a5, we are going to pull our bishop back. Pawn takes, d5, trying to strike in the center. Or else if you try to play something like knight f6, I think it only favors white after knight c3, would be having ideas with e5, d5. So practically it's a bit hard to find this knight f6 idea. d6 is d5 is the most practical move. After d5, we are simply going to capture the pawn. Queen takes, and now simply knight c3. Hitting the queen, queen check, simply bishop e3. What's the idea? We are simply developing our pieces. Knight to f6. Now we can simply play the move d5, very strong move. After g5, if you pull your queen back, we can happily castle. We are having all our pieces developed. We can just develop our rook c1, maybe queen c2. White is extremely happy. But d5 sets up a very nice chess trap, which is after knight into d5, we play the move bishop to b5 check. And after c6, which is a fourth move to hit the bishop and also protecting the knight, simply knight into knight. If queen takes, we can simply capture with the queen, because the queen cannot be captured because the pawn is pinned. And if pawn takes the bishop, knight c7 check leads to queen loss, and eventually white wins the game. So this is exactly what happens if black plays the move knight to a5. So yeah, this is exactly what happens if black plays the move bishop to e7. So finally, let's jump and try to discuss what happens if black plays the move bishop to c5. After bishop c5, it looks logical. We strike in the center via d4. Takes, and now bishop to b4 check. This was the exact same position when at the start of the game, if black captures the pawn with the knight. After knight takes c3, knight c6, d4, takes, bishop b4 check. It's the exact same position. So after bishop b4 check, here we simply play the move king f1. Very interesting move. In this position, Engine might be saying you must play knight g2, maybe bishop d2. But practically speaking, the toughest move for your opponent would be to play king f1. After king f1, your opponent is actually not pretty sure how to respond to this position. After king f1, the bishop on b4 looks kind of awkward on the b4 square. After king f1, let's try to discuss each and every move. I've taken 2 and 3 moves into consideration: d6, knight f6, and knight to e7. If d6, we play the move d5, simply attacking the knight. And the knight is actually having no better place to go rather than on e5, where it is attacking the bishop. But we can simply trade off a knight, and now we are having queen to a4 check, and also simply we are getting a piece. So we are eventually winning the game on the spot. So this is simply a piece blender. If black plays d6, if black plays knight to f6, queen to b3, simply attacking the f7 pawn, black castle, which is the most natural move in the position. We play d5. Still, it's the same case. The knight is attacked. If the knight moves, black is losing the bishop. So the best move for black is to simply capture the pawn now, but we can simply capture the knight. And here, if black tries to capture this pawn, we can even capture the bishop. And if queen e1 is coming if queen d1, queen e1 is coming, and white is 2 pieces up and completely winning position. So after takes, the best practical try is to bishop c5, trying to attack the pawn. But now we are having a very strong move in the position, which is knight to c3. Simply ignoring this threat and keep on developing our pieces. Our idea is to trade off the knights. So if black trades off the knight, we are way more than happy. We are piece up and completely winning. So knight into f2 is the only option for black. But now bishop to g5, attacking the queen, queen to e8, and now comes rook to e1. And the queen is trapped, and there is no way black can continue the position, and white is completely winning. So this is what happens if your opponent plays the move knight to f6. Finally, let's try to discuss what happens if black plays the move knight to e7. After knight e7, queen to b3, still the same idea. And after short castle, g5. And guess what? Knight is also hanging as well as the bishop, so the position is already winning. The knight moves somewhere like to maybe a5. We can simply capture the b4 bishop, and the position is winning for white. White is simply a piece up. So this is how you must play this Evans Gambit, a very big amount of theory. Not theory, I would say a very interesting gambit. It all starts with b4. So yeah, I hope that this gambit must have helped you to improve your knowledge. If it did, then make sure to like the video, share this video with everyone, and make sure to defeat your friends or whomsoever you are playing with this interesting, cool Evans Gambit. So I'm going to come up with these interesting videos like this. So if you're not yet a subscriber, make sure to subscribe to our channel because it's free for you, but it helps us to motivate us to make videos like this. So I'm going to see you soon. So till then, stay tuned and keep watching OneShot Chess.